Not long ago, liberals loathed the Central Intelligence Agency as the enemy of democratic governments, and they installed dictators around the world. And these days, you read the papers, and people on the left are rallying to the defense of the CIA and indignant when the CIA is politicized. How did this come about, that suddenly liberals are championing the CIA?
I don't know.
Do you find it strange or ironic that all this sudden love for the CIA?
I think a lot of the people that did have problems with the CIA, it was a very vocal minority. I think most people didn't really think about it that much, right? It wasn't really on their radar screens in the way that now it is, because now we're in this huge war, and it was the CIA that was warning the administration against invading because there were no weapons of mass destruction. Here's a little secret I don't think I've ever written about. But in 2001, I was unemployed. I was in that, y'all have been there, right? .com people, kind of like between jobs, and you do a little contract work, and that's where I was in this really horrible netherworld of, will I make rent next month? And so I applied to the CIA. And I went all the way to the end. It was to the point where I was going to sign papers to become clandestine services. And it was at that point that the Howard Dean campaign took off. And I had to make a decision whether I was going to kind of join the Dean campaign, that whole process, or was I was going to become a spy. And it was going to be a tough decision at first. But then the CIA insisted that if I joined that, they'd want me to do the first duty assignment in Washington, D.C., and I hate Washington, D.C. And it was 6 years in Washington, D.C. before they'd post me overseas. And I was like, yeah, that made the decision a lot easier. But what was really amazing about that experience is that every single person I talked to in the CIA, and I must have talked to dozens of people, psychologists and people in the leadership, and you go through this whole 6-month process, really in depth. Every single one of them was liberal. Every single one of them. And to the point where I was talking to somebody, we were talking about my website, because he knew about my website, and she was agreeing with me on everything, and this is before the war, right? And she kept saying, man, they're going to take us to war, and, it's just, the evidence isn't there, and this is crazy. And I was like, so this is just you or what? And she's like, no, we're all like this here. This is a very liberal institution. And in a lot of ways, it does attract people who want to make want to make the world a better place. People who are internationalists in general really aren't people who say, I want to go bomb the fuck out of some other country, right? That's not, do you have to bleep that out on the radio?
Yeah, let's try to say it again.
I'll let you bleep it out. And so and when you think of it in a more logical sense, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, they got their dirty ops and this and that, right? But as an institution itself, the CIA is actually really interested in the stable world. That's what they're interested in. And stable worlds aren't created by destabilizing regimes and by starting wars. They're done so by other methods. Assassinating labor leaders. And no, I'm kidding. But that was really surprising to me. So coming from that, and of course I think a lot of conservatives would kind of take that as evidence that the CIA was out to undermine Bush or something, because they are a bunch of liberals, and they were a bunch of liberals. But ultimately that was an eye-opening experience for me, and because ultimately I don't think it's a very partisan thing to want a calm, stable world, and even if you're protecting American interests, that can get ugly at times. But generally speaking, I think as an organization, our heart's in the right place. And if liberals before I had a chance, this is before my time. I've never had a problem with the CIA, and which is why I'd have no problem working for them. But I don't know. I can also keep in mind I came to this country in 1980, so I don't. A lot of this more historical hostility towards the CIA by the left is before my time. So I may be missing nuances or something that. But from a modern perspective, obviously things are a little different.